So tonight, we're going to be carrying on the Sangha Night series, which has been drawing on the Brighton lectures given by Sangha Night, I think in 1976, in the Brighton Pavilion, where he described four gifts that Triratna offers the world based on the teachings of the Buddha. And the first of these gifts is the lotus flower, which is a Buddhist symbol for personal development. It sort of represents how our true selves can unfold. And you probably can't see it, but I've put a picture of a Buddha on the shrine, where the Buddha is holding a lotus, holding the symbol, and holding it in a way that is really kind of saying, here's a challenge. Here's a challenge. Do you understand? So Sangha Night, in the first talk, which we're basing this first sort of mini-series on, described meditation as the direct method of personal development. And indeed, we know, according to tradition, the Buddha gained enlightenment in meditation. And Sangha Night has designed a system, it's called the system of meditation, which was then developed to form the basis for principles for the spiritual life. And this system has 5 parts. So integration, positive emotion, receptivity, spiritual death, and spiritual rebirth. And so far, we've looked at integration. Sangha Gita introduced integration, which is bringing our whole self, our whole personality, our life, and gathering it around our sort of aspirations, our true aspirations. And the meditation here is the mindfulness of breathing. And then Nagavajra introduced positive emotion. And because we can't see the world clearly unless we have positive mental states, so cultivating positive mental states is really important, really fundamental to the spiritual life. States like gratitude, appreciation, and of course, metta. So we have the metta bhavana. And then Sangha Jiva introduced receptivity. And here we start to really open up to life, to experience in the world around us. And Sangha Jiva introduced us to a very beautiful image of him in, I think it was a barge on a canal on a grey, rainy day, looking out of this little window and actually feeling full of life, full of joy. Not very good, this one. Okay. So we're live, good. So anyway, when the talks were being divvied up, okay, you had integration, positive emotion, lovely, beautiful, receptivity. I got spiritual death in the middle of all this. In fact, I didn't even get spiritual death because actually somebody else was originally offered it, and I got given it because nobody else wanted to do it. I was like a substitute, in fact. So I've got a bit of a sort of a little spiritual death going on right here, right now. So let's begin with karma. A crucial part of the spiritual life, indeed the foundation of the spiritual life, is about becoming a healthy, happy human being. It's about developing and cultivating skillful states. And meditation offers a direct way of doing this, along, of course, with having a life that's consistent, with going for refuge to the 3 jewels, consistent with the precepts and all that. But this is very much working what we call the level of karma, willed effort, which is the way our actions, our intended actions, have consequences for ourselves and others, and we work with this in a positive way. We take responsibility for ourselves. And this is all absolutely crucial. But it's not enough. I mean, I know when I feel I'm making progress and old habits die away, I have regular meditation practice, I go on retreats, I can get into some very, very, very good states, mental states, still great stillness, clarity, and so on. But eventually, somehow, I sort of I won't say come crashing down, but I land back in what sometimes seems a very mundane world. My old mental habits sort of reappear and all this sort of thing. It's not to say I haven't made any progress, but there does seem to be a limit. There does seem to be a limit. However hard I might try, and I could try a lot harder, I can tell you, but however hard I try. So what gets in the way? What gets in the way? Well, it's our old friend, in this case, my old friend, myself. Rather, it's my view of myself and how I see myself as this sort of separate, quite fixed, quite permanent sort of being that sort of goes about life. And this view is not just an idea, it's something which really defines my sense of who I am. You know, I try to hold on, I try to grasp life. You know, I have a sense that there's a me here and there's stuff out there, and the stuff of the job of the stuff and the people out there is to serve me, to serve my lifestyle, my identity, my habits. That's what it's all about. There's this quite a famous song, I liked it anyway, called De La Soul, which is Me, Myself and I, okay, by De La Soul. You may remember that from the 1980s. I actually discovered there's 14 separate songs called Me, Myself and I. They weren't unique in coming up with that, which is quite interesting, isn't it? You know, it's got a certain sort of flavour to it. And this sense of self becomes only too evident when something goes wrong. I mean, for me, it's like if my printer breaks down or something like that. Or if your car breaks down, you know, there's that famous sort of incident on TV where somebody's car broke down, they started hitting it with a stick, you know, like this. It's like there's something wrong with the world, it's breaking down, what's going on? Buses get delayed, we lose our wallets, people we love leave us, you know, all sorts of things happen. And this self suddenly rears its head. So yeah, this sense of self is completely natural and normal. But what the Buddha did was to see through this illusion of a fixed, separate self. And as Maitreya Bandhu says, Maitreya Bandhu, as an old member at the LBC, has written a wonderful book on the system of practice called The Journey and the Guide. And he says the Buddha's sense of self was consumed in the fire of nirvana at his enlightenment. The Buddha's sense of self was consumed in the fire of nirvana at his enlightenment. Wonderful words. This is beyond our experience, certainly beyond my experience, beyond my imagination. And indeed, the Buddha himself traditionally had doubts about whether he could teach the insights he had in enlightenment. But he did, fortunately. And his first teaching, one of his first teachings, was along the lines of all things arise in dependence on conditions. Indeed, there's no things, just an ever-changing pattern out of which the appearance of things arise. Fine words, but I do sit there thinking, what on earth does that mean? I mean, I just sort of trotted it out, didn't I? Like I knew what it means. You know, I mean, who the hell do I think I am saying words like that? You know, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, even the Buddha was reticent to try and explain what his experience is, you know, so who do I think I am? But the Buddha did try and explain this, and one of his famous teachings is Anatman, which is not Atman. And Atman is the old Hindu teaching that we have a fixed, unchanging self-nature, that we have a sort of, if you like, an unchanging soul for all eternity. And the Buddha was saying, it's not that. It's not that. He taught something far more sophisticated about the nature of self, which is ever changing by our conditions, by our environment. So ultimately, we can change and we can develop and grow by our actions. But there's always a risk. There's always a risk that I think I, as I am now, can see into the nature of reality. There's a lot of work to be done. And this is where spiritual death comes in. Because the term spiritual death isn't that attractive initially, is it? It's quite a scary term, let's face it. And I suspect it's that for sort of, it's designed to be a bit provocative. Sometimes when you see online meditation teachers, you get the sort of impression that you can become awakened from the comfort of your living room. And I realize some people can't leave the comfort of the living room because of disabilities and so on. But for most of us, this isn't really following the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha's own example was something far more challenging. He completely renounced his life as it had been. He completely renounced his life in the palace, his status as a prince, his status as a warrior, and a whole host of other things. And this was just the start of spiritual death for him. So spiritual life is about this radical transformation, because the old self must make way for the new. The old self view is like a sort of a prison. It's like a prison full of stories, habits, and so on. Another thing that struck me in all this is that spiritual death is what makes Buddhism different from other spiritual traditions, because other traditions in their own way may have elements of integration, have elements of positive emotion and so on, even receptivity. You know, you can read some beautiful poems about receptivity, but they're not Buddhists. And what makes Buddhism different is the practicing of spiritual death. So how can we practice it? I'm just going to put a picture in your mind. Imagine a younger Vimaladasa, okay, in those days called John, who roamed the streets of Coulsdon in South London. And I was smoking, Labour voting, meat eating, drinking, long-haired, if you can believe it, heavy rock listening, and I slight wince at that, to admit at that. But these things all changed. Some consciously changed. I changed habits. I moved to sort of what I realized was cooler music. I stopped smoking. That took a lot of effort, I have to say. My views, I stopped voting as a sort of almost tribally for the Labour Party. And I also sort of let go of all my identity around these things. So these things were what I consciously chose. The other thing I did, and this will really appall some people, which is that I changed my football club allegiance. I'm glad Bodhinaga isn't here. He'd just be disgusted. So I was shaking of heads. Other things just happen, you know. My hair, I lost my parents, all sorts of other things just happen as we get older and life moves on. So how can we practice spiritual death? Well, Sangha Night said, in a paper talking about breaking through into Buddhahood, said, so we have to break through all these conditionings. We have to shatter, to smash our own mechanicalness. Otherwise, there is no Buddhahood, not even, in fact, a real spiritual life. So he doesn't mince his words. He's saying, in a sense, we have to break free from all the things that we see are holding us back. It could be our family conditioning, our psychological conditioning, even rational thinking. And there's a huge amount there. It's often said that we're a bit like jigsaw pieces, where place, people, ideas, all these things create this sort of gap that we sort of fit into, that's sort of fixed and rigid. And what we're looking for is how to break out of that. Yeah, so spiritual death is highly positive because we're making way for something else, a better version of ourselves, something all transcendental. But it may not feel that great at the time sometimes. Yeah. So we all can't go forth like the Buddha. We can't leave our families and way of life. We have responsibilities. I myself, when I first came to the centre, had 3 young children. My priority as a practicing Buddhist was to look after those children. But there's all sorts of other ways of practicing spiritual death. So it's amazing, actually, how much we can do. We can change our unskillful habits. Smoking was a big one for me. It had been a sort of source of status and so on for many years, actually, when I was young. I was actually caned for smoking at school. And this actually became a sort of a bit of a badge. You know, this was like, this helped my status quite a lot amongst my friends. So, you know, I didn't want to give it up that easily. But we've all got our habits. Our unskillful habits could be scrolling on our phones when we've got a spare few minutes, whatever. There's a whole, there's a huge amount there. Self-views. Now, the self-views is quite an interesting one. We can have all sorts of views and stories about ourselves. One of my self-views is that I'm a bit of an introvert. So when I heard about the garden party this evening, I was like, oh, garden party. There'll be lots of people. It'll all be very sort of super social. And then I realized I've got to let that go. I've got to go to the garden party, haven't I, Dialoka? And I've got to help at the garden party, okay? That's all part of it. All a part of spiritual death practice. And a rebirth as well. So yeah, well worth doing. And there's lots of other things. Living arrangements. I mean, some of us might feel quite fixed in this, but certainly for people who've got a bit more, haven't got the responsibilities, there are other ways we can live. We have two wonderful, thriving communities here in Trevena. We've got the men's community here and there's a women's community down the road. And others can be set up. You know, there are all sorts of ways that we can actually let go of things that we think of as fixed, things that we don't think we can change about how we live our lives. Going on retreat is a more of a temporary thing. You can experience, in a way, a sort of letting go of a whole range of things that you would regard as pretty normal for your, and essential for your day-to-day life, around what you eat, where you sleep, how you spend your time, and so on. So we can break through all sorts of aspects of what we think are fixed about ourselves. So it's a good question to think about what you could do. So there's all of that. There's another, though, whole area here which I really like, which I call stuff happens, okay? Stuff happens in life. Just when we're starting to feel, well, I'm feeling comfortable about life, something will happen which will upset the apple cart a bit. We bump up against reality. We experience things that might seem like loss, discomfort, something we don't like. And somehow, in these situations, if we allow it, the light of the Dharma can shine through. And it's simply about being open and receptive and reflecting on this sort of day-to-day experience. And this allows us to really explore or find or see in our own day-to-day experience, particularly the three lakshanas, which we're all familiar with, of impermanence, the unsatisfactory nature of conditioned things, and insubstantiality, that sort of lack of fixed self-nature. So getting back to the broken printer, I may not like it at the time, but actually it's a really good opportunity to appreciate a simple fact that things break. You know, we don't live in a permanent, perfect world. In a sense, I don't need to say that. You all know this. It's just a question of appreciating what that's telling us about the nature of the world. Relationships. You know, I've experienced a separation and divorce, and these are really strong times for people for all sorts of reasons. For me, it really presented a mirror back on me and what I was really like, and really sort of, there were aspects of me that I didn't like when I looked into that mirror. But I also knew that I had an opportunity to rebuild, you know, to move on and to change, with a lot of help from friends here in the community. And then there's, you know, there is literal death of friends or relatives and all these sorts of things. These are huge life events as well. And they can also point to all sorts of things. I mean, for me, when my father died a few years back, it really changed my relationship to my own life, because I suddenly began to value my own life and my own opportunity more. So these are moments, you know, that are speaking to us. Everything from the smallest thing, you know, as I say, a printer breaking down, car breaking down, the bus not turning up, right through to big life events. These are always speaking to us something about the nature of life. So I just want to read a poem which I think expresses this really, really well, by Sangha Night, called Life is King. So hour after hour, day after day, we try to grasp the ungraspable, pinpoint the unpredictable. Flowers wither when touched, ice suddenly cracks beneath our feet. Vainly we try to track bird flight through the sky, trace dumb fish through deep water, try to anticipate the earned smile, the soft reward, even try to grasp our own lives, but life slips through our fingers like snow. Life cannot belong to us. We belong to life. Life is king. So now we come to meditation, because an important part of the theme that we've been looking at has been, in a sense, the place of meditation in our spiritual practice. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, well, the only way we can really do this is to actually practice a bit of meditation together. But before we do that, I just want to say something about meditation. Meditation is really, really important way, as we've said many times, of developing warm, loving, kind, calm states. But it's also an important way of experiencing, of just catching a glimpse, really, into something about the nature of reality, and particularly the lakshanas. So yeah, to catch a glimpse of a glimpse. This is often termed insight, but it's not cognitive. It's not that at all. It is an experience, and it's not a one-off. When you meditate regularly, these sort of little glimpses sort of build up over time. They become really, for many of us, become really important ways of understanding our lives and have a really important impact on our lives as well over time. So these things, you know, it doesn't have to be some big, grand sort of insight into naturality. It can be the smallest, the most mundane thing that slowly, slowly is showing us what's going on in reality. And it's really, really helpful practice. And there are some specific sort of, if you like, more insight-focused meditations, but mindfulness of breathing and metta bhavana actually are also have important insight sort of elements. Naga Vajri described how the metta bhavana practice can help us really break down that sense of separation between us and others. And it's a really important practice for doing that. So what I was going to do is to actually take us through the mindfulness of breathing yeah, as a way to start to see some of the sort of the nature of the lakshanas in our experience. So yeah, so I'm going to suggest we go on a bit of an adventure. It's going to take about 20 minutes. I will guide us. So make yourself comfortable, and I'll just shift a few things around. And so I hope everybody's comfortable at home as well. So get yourself comfortable and get yourself into a good posture. Just allowing the weight of your body just to drop down. And at the same time, keeping a reasonably straight, poised back. And the first thing is just to relax any tension in your body. Because in a way, that holding on to tension is actually a bit of a grasping. So just starting with your legs, just letting go of any tension in your thighs and your calves. Just softening that tension as best you can. And then moving to the belly. There's no need to hold that in. You can just let it go. And moving up to the shoulders. Another place where that holding on tends to be. And down your arms, similarly letting go of any tension into your hands. Just allowing your hands to be soft. And moving up to your neck, maybe tucking your chin in a little bit just to help relax the neck. The jaw, and then all those muscles of the face, those small facial muscles that often is holding our face. Those muscles around our eyes. Again, just softening them. So we've got a sense of our whole body, as relaxed as we can get it. Maybe just briefly tuning into how you are. And just bringing kindness to that experience. So now just starting to follow the breath, just resting your attention on the breath in the body. Movement in the belly. The regular movement up and down with the breath. And the ribs, similarly moving in and out. The chest. And your shoulders. And your back too. Just enjoying the effect of the breath on the body. And just observing that the breath doesn't need a me to happen. It's been happening since the moment we were born. So now we're going to start the first stage of the mindfulness of breathing. So we're going to focus on the out breath, particularly where the breath ends, but without counting. So you're just watching it. You're just watching the out breath. Maybe just asking the question, when does this breath cease to be yours and just become air? Where is the breath once you've let go of it? So now moving to stage 2, looking at where the breath begins. Just asking yourself, where does the breath seem to begin? Is there a point when it stops being air and starts to be an in-breath? Where is the breath before you begin the inhale? Is there a clear boundary between air and breath, between your breath and the air? And now just rest your attention on the whole breath. As you would in stage 3. And actually try to experience the breathing itself and not any thoughts about it. Just enjoying the flow, the natural flow, and subtle sensations. Just ask, is there anything permanent or fixed in your experience of the breath? Are you in any sense in control? Life is king. Hour after hour, day after day, we try to grasp the ungraspable, pinpoint the unpredictable. Flowers wither when touched. Ice suddenly cracks beneath our feet. Vainly we try to track bird flight through the sky, trace dumb fish through the deep water, try to anticipate the earned smile, the soft reward, even try to grasp our own lives. But life slips through our fingers like snow. Life cannot belong to us. We belong to life. Life is king. So just bringing some kindness along with the awareness of your experience. And then in your own time, just letting go of any effort and just slowly maybe move a little, and in your own time, open your eyes.